So hitting on the loan piece for a minute, which is for a lot of schools, the first way that they award need-based aid is with subsidized federal direct loans. So those loans are reasonable interest rates. They will be, if you file the FAFSA, they will be on your financial aid award letter. And they can be subsidized or unsubsidized. So if they're subsidized, it means that they are a loan that you don't pay interest while you're in school. So those are kind of a no-brainer if you get them. Even if you've got the money, you might as well take it. It's a 1% up front, but you might as well keep that money on hand, even if you have it. So, and the unsubsidized, pretty reasonable rates, 6.53 now. And then the maximum over the 4 years is 27,000. The key I always try to point out for families, if it's subsidized or unsubsidized, understand if you need loans at all, you might want to consider taking them in year one because they're use it or lose it. So you can't say, hey, we've got the money for freshman, sophomore year, we'll just figure it out later. Well, figuring out that out later usually means either private loans or a Parent Plus loan. So you're better off to know, hey, what do we need in loans total? Should we consider go ahead and taking this all in the student's name, no cosigner required? If there's any loans to be forgiven, these are the ones that are going to get it, right? So if you need more than 27,000, I typically would say go ahead and start using that from day one. Even though you might not need it for year one, it sounds like different than what we would typically think, but that's a strategy to know that that's the capital that's there for you. Um, and so, and from a loan perspective, like we just kind of put some guardrails around it. If you're looking at comparing these award letters side by side, how much loan is too much loan? And usually our benchmark is if you take out more loans than you're going to make your first year out in that major, that's too much. You're just not going to be able to repay it. So that's kind of the key we put here. If you can get out of school, if your student can get out of school with just a federal direct student loan, they're going to be just fine. It's about a $275 to $300 a month payment, and if that's their part of contributing to their cost of college, that's a reasonable loan amount in today's world. It's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but in today's world, if they can get out with just that, that's pretty good. And you can always help them pay that back. You can always help pay that back, but leveraging that loan throughout, they're going to be just fine. But we know that if they go up and above, especially with some of the new income-based repayment plans, which I won't get too into, they're requiring much more than they did a year ago for people, even at the minimum levels, even if they're not making a lot of money, they're requiring up to 15% as opposed to used to be 10. So even more important than before. And then on the federal direct parent plus loan, this is an outdated slide. Sorry about that. It's kind of relevant though, because this year, with the federal direct parent plus loan, the family could take out up to the full cost of attendance minus the aid. That's changing going forward. So in 2026 and going forward, that's changing. So it used to be if they give you, hey, we cost 50,000, here's 25,000 off, you can take this Parent Plus loan for 25,000. And then that would be each year. That's changing now because it's going to be capped at 20,000, 20,000 and 65,000 total over four is the most you can take from that Parent Plus program. So 20,000 per year, but a maximum of 65 over four. So you can't take 20 each year. So just keep that in mind. It's usually not a great interest rate, and it has a high origination fee. So kind of the tax on the front end of it's 4.2. So if you have good credit, you probably want to look elsewhere because that's based on the rates are based on people that have about a 400 or 500 credit score. So if you've got home equity line of credit or other ways to access dollars through other areas that you might want to consider. So the trap though is, like I said, I've had very smart people that have the money go ahead and say, yeah, we'll just take that plus loan and we'll just pay it back next month or something. But you paid 4.2% up front to do that. So be very cautious the way it's presented as if it's financial aid because it is technically, but make no mistake, it's a loan. So I wanted to point those things out because as we get into looking at these award letters, you'll see what that becomes important of how they present those. Okay, and then yeah, private loans. There will be increased amounts of private loans out there because some of the changes have been made to the Parent Plus loan, as well as graduate programs, which I won't get into tonight. But private loans are with a bank, and I can tell you, I haven't seen one in a long time that didn't require a cosigner. Could be you as a parent or a grandparent, but even if the student leads that charge, if that's the only way you can see a path forward to pay for this school, just know that those private loans require a cosigner to make those loans yours, essentially. And those are loans that they don't have forgiveness on them. There's nothing. They're not going to forgive those loans. So be cautious of getting in over your head with those. And private loans, I have seen people tap out, meaning that cosigner didn't have great credit, student doesn't have any credit. By the senior year, they said we're not giving you any more loans. So that's a problem. So just make sure that's why we're going to try and make an informed decision here. That salary stuff matters because as we're going through and we're seeing what's it cost to get to this degree, the return on that same investment in education may have a much higher payoff with different majors. So thinking about, is it worth a premium to go to one school over another? Well, if their average starting salaries are over 100,000 and this other school is at 70, I got to kind of weigh that. Is the outcome better? That's how I think about that. Is it worth paying a premium for some schools over another in that chosen major? And the answer sometimes is yes, but a lot of times probably not. If you're going to be an educator or be a school counselor, like you're going to make the same. It doesn't matter if you went to Harvard or if you went to Columbus State. And you're going to have to get a master's degree as well, by the way, to do those things. So, most of our good school districts, I think it's crazy, but education is one of our lowest paid uh, careers, but yet they have to go get another a degree on top of there. So just think about that and the whole body of work of getting to that job that your student wants to. If it's a physical therapist or if there's 5-year programs. So, do they need to go to grad school to have that kind of job? So, because I think Amber, you can comment here, but like graduate school, thinking about what's the body of work to get to that targeted career, you got to think about that in this process. I'll let you kind of comment on that.
Yes, there's frequently, families will say, like, as Joe was commenting, like the premium, if my student goes to Washington University in St. Louis, kind of the Ivy League school of the Midwest, if you will, to get their undergrad degree, but they want to go to law school. I had this exact situation, and it was going to cost that student 45,000 a year to go to Wash U to then go on to law school after that, compared to Ohio State, where a lot of, law schools, they have just as many students admitted to law school from state universities that they do from super highly selective schools. So that is part of this process. You've got to factor in the total amount of time. And then I always tell families, if the student isn't 100% sure exactly what they want to do in terms of a career, look at 2 to 3 of them that they're considering or that they might like, and then figure out like maybe an average starting salary of those three. And then that can help you gauge what to borrow in terms of amount.
Yeah. Yeah. So and this isn't perfect, but at least if you have a target and you're like, we know it's engineering, it's one of these things, but if you don't, if it's, I think we will see the rise of the liberal arts education. We already started to see it because of technology doing so much for us in a lot of areas that our employers are looking for thinkers. They're looking for people that are wired that way, trained that way. So solve difficult problems that computers can't, which may sound crazy because what I did on Gemini today, I was like, wow, that was crazy. But these things are evolving. They will continue to, but some of them won't. So hopefully that's a helpful framing of kind of where these things shake out from self-help to understanding those. And the part I drive home, especially maybe for a little younger, and even for people that are at the finish line, is that they're going to look at your financials to determine your need-based eligibility. They're going to look at your academics to determine if you get scholarships. But you can't change the aid policy of the institution. And what I mean by that is some schools just simply don't offer scholarships,
Yep.
and that's a lot of our top schools. So I get a call a couple times a year, this time of year, January, February. Well, they got into Columbia. I thought they would get a scholarship. I was like, well, I could have told you they won't, and they would have told you they won't because they don't offer them, nor do any of the Ivies. And there's a not a long list, but a lot of top schools. So that's a tough pill to swallow, and it's a tough conversation to have once your student has that acceptance letter. And I feel for you. I do because that's tough. But so again, if you're on the younger side of this, understand what you would get in the form of scholarships and or need-based aid at different schools side by side, and you can get a read on that early. So I don't know if you want to tell any heartbreak stories, Amber, but I know we've shared
No,
those together.
I don't
So.
want to bum people out. But I tell families often the number one thing that's going to influence your overall bottom line is the schools on the list on the front end. This is
Mhm.
not a figure out how to pay for it when you finally get the yes. It's got
Mhm.
to be thought out in advance.
Yeah. Yeah, and I encourage, like, this is I call it a pretty simple exercise. We've got a worksheet I'll send out with this on it with blanks, but to get to understanding what your loans will be, what your out of pocket versus what you're still going to owe, you need to have a budget going in. And that's not all savings. So when you're looking at, you can decipher them all you want. No, you need to pay 250,000, but where does that leave you? So doing this exercise of what do we have in 529s? What are we contributing now? And could we continue those contributions? So consider that part of cash flow. Do we have other assets that we might have earmarked for college as parents, be that a mutual fund or stocks from work or something like that? And putting that on here for this student. I should have, reiterate, this is for this student because a lot of times what you would do for one, you like to do for all in most cases. But then the cash flow becomes a really important element because considering what you're already saving, just assume you can continue doing that because it doesn't change your lifestyle. But other things that are going to be not coming out of your fridge, like a meal plan, paying for club hockey, if you're used to that, if you're paying for private school, those things that you're used to paying, factor those in as cash flow into, hey, oh yeah, we're used to, and a lot of times it comes up to, 500 to $1,000 once you put all those things together and think about it. It's once a week. You're paying for hotels and this and that, and it goes out the pocket. But a lot of times that's a meaningful number that can help keep loans down. And schools have zero interest payment plans. Some of them present that on the award letter, some don't. But some even will say, I also have a sample in here, actually, it'll show you, hey, if you'd like to pay this in 10 installments, here's your payment. So just know that that's available out there. And then do you expect the student to work? Because the work study conversation is going to be part of a lot of financial aid award letters that come out. So, if they have any assets, that's great if they've saved it, but getting clear on, hey, that's going towards tuition. Or if you go here, it doesn't have to go towards tuition. You can keep that for other stuff. But if you go here, we expect you to use that for your college costs. And then cash flow wise, it's the conversation of one, do you expect them to work? And two is, does that go directly towards tuition or is that more for walking around money? Because if walking around money, it doesn't get on this sheet, right? So if you expect them, we're going to get your tuition and your apartment, but you're going to be responsible for your food. Like hey, that's because that food cost is in here, so that would count here. And then the other one is we're at a point like if you're still having trouble talking to your parents about money, now's the time. We need to know if it's 5,000 or 5,000 a year because it's a very different number. And then that could bring certain schools into play and make other ones out of play. That one element. So getting clear on what is it, where does it sit. So hopefully it's a helpful exercise. What are you going to put in? What do you expect from the kids? And is there any outside help? So those are the big three. And then even down to those loans we were looking at, if that's the participation from the student, I think our students are more acutely aware of the student loan crisis. They're hearing about it from their older friends that, yeah, so letting them know, helping them be informed, not be surprised when they get that 27,000 of loans. I think it's just important to say, hey, we're going to put in X. You got these scholarships, good for you, but we're going to need these loans, and that's going to be your part of paying for education. That's okay. I know we all want to put our kids through school without any loans, but it's just really not very common these days. So